As Renji Abarai recovers in his cell, the spirit of his Zanpakuto Zabimaru says that he wishes to face Ichigo Kurosaki's Zanpakuto Zenjutsu again, but Renji tells him that Ichigo is no longer his enemy. Elsewhere, Yodishi Shoin manages to evade Byakuya Kuchiki and escape with Ichigo. After Ichigo regains consciousness, she begins to instruct him in the use of his Bankai, the final stage of his Zanpakuto that would vastly increase his power. Orihime Inoue and Yuryu Ishida are attempting to travel to Rukia Kuchiki's cell by using Soul Reaper clothes, but they are closely watched by 12th Division Captain Mayuri Kurotsuchi. Orihime and Yuryu continue towards Rukia's location, but are accosted by Mikazo Aramaki, a Soul Reaper of the 11th Division. Some 12th Division members arrive to help, but Mayuri, who has made them into human bombs, detonates them. Orihime uses her powers to protect Yuryu and herself from the explosions, and Mayuri expresses his wish to experiment on Orihime. Yuryu begins to fight Mayuri, but is quickly disabled by the paralyzing abilities of Mayuri's Zanpakuto when his lieutenant, Nemu Kurotsuchi, uses her body to hold down Yuryu. Mayuri then reveals that he has experimented on many other Quincy, including Yuryu's grandfather, Soka Nishida, and was responsible for his death. Yuryu uses the Quincy technique Ransatenga to overcome the paralysis of Mayuri's Zanpakuto. However, he is outclassed by Mayuri, and is forced to take off his Senrei glove, an act that releases the limits on his powers. Yuryu proceeds to completely overwhelm Mayuri, even after Mayuri releases his Bankai, but Mayuri escapes by transforming into a liquid. Nemu gives Yuryu the antidote to the poison of Mayuri's Bankai, and Yuryu continues on towards Rukia's cell, severely weakened, until he is confronted by another Soul Reaper captain, Kaname Toussaint. Tozen disables Yuryu instantly with his Zanpakuto, and has him incarcerated. Yodishi summons Zenjutsu using a Tenshintai, one of Kisuke Urahara's inventions. Zenjutsu states that if Ichigo defeats him, he will be able to perform his Bankai, and will be slain if he fails. Elsewhere, Hanataro Yamada is admonished by his captain, Ritsu Anahana, for helping Ichigo. Renji breaks out of his prison cell. 3rd Division Captain Jin Ichimaru releases his lieutenant, Izurukira, from his imprisonment. And 11th Division Captain Kenpachi Zaraki agrees to help Orihime find Ichigo in order to fight Ichigo again. While incarcerated, 5th Division Lieutenant Momo Hinamori recalls her experiences at the Soul Reaper Academy, where she befriended Renji and Izuru. On a field trip to hunt hollows, she and her comrades were saved by Captain Sosuke Aizen and then Lieutenant Ichimaru when powerful hollows attacked. Back in the present, Hinamori knocks her guard unconscious and escapes from her cell, planning to confront the person who killed Aizen. Yodishi notes that Ichigo's training for his Bankai is going well and stops the training for the day. She reveals in their subsequent conversation that Kisuke Urahara used to be the 12th Division captain. Elsewhere, Toshiro Hatsugaya confronts Ichimaru and Kira over Aizen's murder, but is interrupted by Hinamori, who believes that Hatsugaya killed Aizen. Hatsugaya knocks Hinamori unconscious and prepares to kill Ichimaru. Hatsugaya and Ichimaru begin to fight, and Ichimaru initially takes the upper hand with his swordplay. Hatsugaya turns the tables by using the Shikai of his Zanpakuto to immobilize Ichimaru by freezing his arm, but this advantage is countered when Ichimaru uses his own Shikai to threaten the unconscious Hinamori. 10th Division Lieutenant Rangiku Matsumoto arrives to aid Hinamori and Hatsugaya, and Ichimaru withdraws rather than go against her. Meanwhile, Renji arrives at Ichigo's training spot and reveals that Rukia's execution date has been moved to the next day. Rukia reminisces about her past as a member of the 13th Division. As she was able to get into the 13 Court Guard squads due to being part of the Kuchiki clan, she was disliked by the other members of her division, but she was able to construct a deep friendship with Lieutenant Kaien Shiba. One night, however, a hollow merged with Kaien and attempted to kill Rukia. Kaien regained control of his body, and impaled himself on Rukia's Zanpakuto. Rukia, believing that she is a coward who killed Kaien, is convinced that she should be executed. Kon tries to escape from Yuzuka Arasaki. While on the run, he is found by a desperate Don Kanonji, whose television ratings are starting to plummet. Together they reform the Karakura superheroes, with Yuzu playing Karakura Yellow and Kon playing Karakura King. Kenpachi, along with Orheim and his subordinates, begins to travel to the execution grounds, but are confronted by Captain Sergeant Komamura and Tozen, with their respective lieutenants Tetsuziman Ibar and Shuhei Hisagi, Ikaku Madaram and Yumichika Ayasegawa. Kenpachi's subordinates begin fights with Ibar and Hisagi respectively, and Komamura and Tozen attack Kenpachi. Elsewhere, Renji has acquired his Bankai, and Yodishi is confident that Ichigo will do the same. Renji travels to Rukia's execution area, and meets his captain Byakuya along the way. Renji ends up using his Bankai to fight Byakuya, but his lack of experience with his Bankai stymies his efforts. Byakuya uses his Shikai to try and counterattack but fails, and Renji reveals that his Bankai is held together by his spiritual pressure. Byakuya uses his own Bankai and attacks again, wounding Renji and causes his Bankai to fade away. Finally, Renji makes a last try and actually reaches his captain with his Zanpakuto, but it breaks and Renji's wounds cause him to fall as the captain congratulates him. As Rukia travels to the execution area, Ichimaru shatters her resolve by offering to help her, but subsequently claiming that his offer was insincere to begin with. Kenpachi is easily battling both Komamura and Tozen, forcing Tozen to use his Bankai, which removes all of Kenpachi's senses with the exception of his sense of touch. Despite being unable to see Tozen, Kenpachi manages to locate and injure Tozen, but is stopped from killing him by Komamura. Komamura activates his Bankai and engages Kenpachi. Meanwhile, Rukia arrives at the execution grounds. Rukia has accepted her execution, and gives a request to 1st Division Captain Genrusei Shigekuni Yamamoto to send Ichigo and his friends home after her execution. The Sokyoku, a massive halberd that transforms into a phoenix, is the execution method. However, Ichigo steps forward and stops the Sokyoku with his sword, and sympathetic captains Shinsui Kyoraku and Jushiro Okitake destroy the Sokyoku. As Renji arrives to take away Rukia, Ichigo defeats 3 pursuing lieutenants with his bare hands, and turns to face Byakuya. Byakuya begins to fight Ichigo, and promises to execute Rukia himself. Anohana personally heals all of the injured present, then leaves to investigate another location. Kyoraku and Okitake also sprint from the execution grounds, and the pair confront Yamamoto in a secluded area. In an overwhelming display, Yamamoto activates his Shikai and incinerates the surrounding area. Yumichika returns to his captain after defeating Hisagi, and Kenpachi remarks that Komamura fled after Yamamoto began fighting. Kyoraku and Okitake decide to fight their teacher, and both use the Shikai of their Zanpakuto. Meanwhile, 2nd Division Captain Suifang begins to fight Yodishi, her former commander and teacher, and gains the advantage after she begins using her Shikai. Believing she has the advantage, Suifang activates a nameless technique she recently discovered which greatly increases her power. However, Yodishi activates the same technique, calling it Shinko. Suifang recalls her past with Yodishi. She was Yodishi's personal guard, and highly faithful to her. However, when Yodishi left the Soul Society, she felt betrayed, and carried a grudge against her mentor from that point forward. As Suifang attacks, Yodishi uses her Shinko to block all of Suifang's attacks. Suifang breaks down in tears, asking Yodishi why she did not take her along when she left the Soul Society. Ikaku and Iba are fighting, albeit casually for sake. Near the execution site, Ichigo uses his newly learned Get Sugar Tensho technique to defeat Byakuya's Shikai and requests that Byakuya use his Bankai. Byakuya uses his Bankai and overwhelms Ichigo with millions of tiny blades. In response, Ichigo uses his own Bankai, which makes him incredibly fast. Ichigo evades Byakuya's Bankai and stabs him with his sword. Meanwhile, Toshiro Hatsugaya and Rangiku Matsumoto head to the Central 46 Chambers, the highest authority in the Soul Society. Byakuya uses the second form of his Bankai, summoning several rows of swords. As he and Ichigo continue to fight, Ichigo becomes progressively weaker as the strain from his Bankai increases. His inner hollow takes over his body after Byakuya wounds him, and he starts to overwhelm Byakuya. However, Ichigo manages to suppress his inner hollow, and regains control over his body. Both Ichigo and Byakuya focus the remainder of their powers and clash in a final strike, with Ichigo the victor. Byakuya reveals that he would allow Rukia to be executed because he values the law above her life. Once a criminal's punishment has been decided, it must be carried out, and admits defeat, claiming that Ichigo has convinced him not to execute Rukia. Elsewhere, Hitsugaya and Matsumoto enter the Central 46 Chambers. Hitsugaya and Matsumoto enter the Central 46 Chambers to find all of its occupants slain. Kira arrives, and Hitsugaya and Matsumoto pursue him. Hitsugaya returns when Kira tells him that Hinamori has entered the Central 46 Chambers. Ichimaru meets Hinamori and takes her further into the chambers, where she is reunited with Aizen. Aizen impales Hinamori with his sword, and Aizen and Ichimaru leave the chamber. Hitsugaya arrives, and is enraged at Hinamori's state. He uses his Bankai, but Aizen effortlessly defeats him. Anohana appears, denouncing Aizen after discovering that he is a traitor. Aizen then informs her that every Soul Reaper has been under the hypnosis of his Zanpakuto, with the exception of the blind Tozen, Aizen's other accomplice. At Anohana's command, Isane Kotetsu informs all high-ranking members of the 13 Court Guard squads of Aizen's duplicity. Aizen arrives at Rukia's execution site, where Tozen has brought Rukia and Renji. When Aizen asks Renji to leave Rukia, he refuses and begins to fight Aizen. Ichigo also arrives, and the two fight in unison against Aizen. Aizen defeats both of them, and begins to explain his reasons for betraying the Soul Society until he is interrupted by Komamura. Aizen defeats Komamura with an extremely powerful Kido spell and continues his explanation by revealing he arranged Rukia's execution to obtain the Hogyoku, an orb that would allow him to gain hollow powers that was hidden in Rukia's Gegai by Urahara. After extracting the Hogyoku from her body, Aizen orders Ichimaru to kill Rukia before Byakuya saves her, as the majority of the 13 Court Guard squads then arrive to restrain Aizen. But Aizen and his accomplices use several hollows to escape into the hollows world Hukomundo. Afterwards, as Byakuya recovers, he explains to Rukia that he married her sister, Hisuna, and adopted Rukia into the Kuchiki clan as Hisuna's dying wish. T explaining that as he promised his parents to uphold the law without question as he broke his clan's rules in adopting her, Byakuya admits that he was conflicted between following the rules and allowing Rukia's execution or breaking them to save her. After a clip show in which the events of the arc are recounted, Ichigo and his friends return to the human world. However, Rukia decides to remain in the Soul Society rather than leave with Ichigo.